Hey, health junkies! It's time for the Health Fix. Join your host, Dr. Janine Krause, as she gives you a dose of what you need to know and do right now to take control of your health from the inside out, to rebel against aging, look damn good, fight stress, and laugh every day.
Hello there, health junkies. I'm your host, Dr. Janine Krause. Welcome to another episode of The Health Fix. Today, I'm going to talk about how you can move like a teenager with some mobility enhancement techniques. So these are some techniques that I've discovered work really well for when folks tell me they can't bend over and stand on one leg and put their shoe on or their sock on like they used to, or they're like complaining about this nagging knee pain, so they stop running or they stop walking, or they're complaining about foot pain or low back pain and keep saying, oh, it must be arthritis. Well, yes, we could have arthritis depending on how much we've used our joints and abused the joints, and technically how old we are and our nutrition status. But actually, a lot of times I have a lot of folks thinking that they have arthritis or they're actually set up to go have surgery on certain areas, when in reality, if they release the muscles that attach into the area of pain, then what happens? Well, the pain goes away. So there are things that you can do on your own to help with your mobility, because unfortunately massage is, you got to pay for that. And same thing for an acupuncturist and some of the techniques that I do, you got to pay to see me all the time. And, I would love to see folks all the time, but doing some work at home day in, day out can really, really enhance your mobility. One of the big things that I tend to work with folks is really starting from their feet all the way up to the top of the head. And the reason being is because if we have back pain, if we have chronic knee pain, oftentimes you want to look at your feet and see what's going on there. Might not be your feet per se, but it could be your ankles causing the issue. And most of the time, it's movement of your ankle. If your ankle isn't bending and moving like it should, then your feet aren't going to move like they should. Then your knee isn't, your hip isn't, and you can imagine going all the way up the chain into your low back. And so a lot of us need to start from the foot up. The other way that I like folks to think about mobility is working on walking properly too, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But first things first, those ankles. Now I want you to stick your toes up in the air just now. Put your toes up, and then I want you to point your toes. And then I want you to put your toes up in the air and then point them. So make a 90-degree angle with your ankle, and so toes up, and then point your toes. And do that a little bit. How's that feel? Does it feel like it's moving well, or does it feel like really tight, or do your calves feel really tight? Now I want you to kind of take the bottom of your foot and try to turn the bottom of your foot in and turn it out. This is called inversion and eversion of your ankle. But the idea here is curl your feet kind of inwards, push them outwards. Inwards, outwards. And so this moves your ankle. And a lot of us tend to have pain at one of these motions, or we notice that we just don't move very well. Your ankle realistically should be able to bend, so with the toes up, in a 45-degree angle, not even a 90. A lot of us can't go much past 90. And when I say 90 in the angle, I'm talking about the angle that's created from your shin bone, otherwise known as your tibia, and your foot. And if you can bend that toe back a little bit and get more towards a 45-degree angle, that's a little bit better mobility. A lot of us can't do that. And then the other way to look at your ankle mobility, and I'm kind of looking back at my ankle right now, is to see what happens when you point your toe. Can you get close to 180 degrees? Meaning from your tibia straight out pointing your toe. Now, of course, you're not going to get perfect 180 degrees, but just look and see what happens. Can you point your toe and what happens? So that's one of the biggies. If you can't move your ankle very well, chances are you're going to have issues with your hip. Chances are you're going to have issues with the knee. Most of the time, it's a simple fix of working on your calf muscles. Now, most of us are walking around with pretty tight calf muscles just in general. We don't even think about it. And these guys are easy peasy to release. Now, I use two techniques. there's the technique of cupping. And what that is creating suction to pull up your tissue and help to get blood flow into that suction. So what that cup sucked up into it, you've got blood flow going on there. And then it helps to release adhesions from your tissue and your muscle, and then the muscles that are stuck together. Because what happens when we lose mobility is that our skin oftentimes is adhering to the muscle, and our muscles are adhering to each other. And our muscles are supposed to slide over each other. There's a type of skin that covers them, and it's nice and lubricated in the body, and it should move pretty seamlessly, just kind of glide back and forth. And unfortunately, when we end up with scar tissue because, say, we tore a little part of a muscle or something of that nature, we end up getting sticky muscles, as I call them, and those sticky muscles reduce your mobility. So to work on the ankle, I oftentimes will have folks working on their calf, because if you have chronic ankle pain, it's likely that it's because your calves are really tight. The same thing goes with chronic foot pain. So plantar fasciitis, usually chronic bottom of the foot heel pain, is usually due to tight calves as well. Especially if you're talking about pain kind of in the middle of your heel or kind of on the edge of your heel out to the side a little bit on, say, your lateral side of your heel, meaning the side that goes to your outside of your knee or outside of your ankle versus the inside of your ankle. And a lot of times folks will have pain there. That's usually also a calf issue. Now, you can use cups to release your calves. You can also use something called gua sha. Gua sha is the use of a tool to scrape the tissue. Now, that might sound really barbaric and horrible, and honestly, it's a little painful, but if you use a little bit of coconut oil or olive oil or whatever kind of oil you've got hanging around the house, you can get that tool, and I use a jade type of tool to help to glide over the tissue a little bit better and work on releasing adhesions. So the sticky, crunchy stuff that you might feel on your tendons as they're coming down to attach into your heel, so your Achilles tendon, or you might feel it even in the muscles higher up on the calf. Now, for example, a lot of people talk about a condition called shin splints. Shin splints is the case in which you've got the muscle of your anterior tibialis, so this is a muscle in the front of your shin, that's pulling away from your tibia. That's not cool. And half the time, the reason that's happening is because your muscle there, that's right next to your tibia, so that's the big bone in your leg, it's literally tight. And if you just release it a little bit, it's going to help with leg pain and ankle pain, and also help with foot pain subsequently. So gua sha, getting back to that, the jade tool looks kind of like a guitar pick, but it's like maybe 5 sizes larger. You can find these guys online. All you do is Google on Amazon jade gua sha, so GUASHA tool, and you can get them anywhere from like $5 to $12. You can get a great quality one, and for next to nothing compared to some of the fancier tools out there for mobility. And you don't need to be spending like $60 on things called the Mobility Star. Sorry to the inventors of that, but guess what? Hey, having a little bit extra cash in your pocket never hurt. So gua sha is a Chinese technique, and it's used all over in Asia to help to release muscles, but it also can be used for getting rid of colds. And that's a whole nother story. That's another episode, but let's get back to mobility. So how do you work this gua sha thing? You literally hold the tool and you put the beveled edge up against your muscle. Of course, apply some oil. Now, guys, if you have hairy legs, or ladies too, you want to maybe shave them. And the way I describe this is because it's going to feel like you're pulling the hairs out when you're doing the gua sha, and that doesn't feel too good. Same thing with cupping. Those cups don't stick very well or suction very well when you've got a bunch of hair on the tissue. So with gua sha, you're applying pressure and you're kind of going back and forth in somewhat of a stroking kind of motion, as if you were painting, and applying some decent amount of pressure. And play with it, like go up and down on your front of your calf and the back of your calf, and move your ankle around and see if you notice some mobility or movement, so increased movement in that ankle. You can also take that gua sha tool and run it on the bottom of your foot. If you find a spot where it's especially tender, you can also press a little harder into there and just kind of rock back and forth with the gua sha tool. What you're doing is you're creating irritation, right? So you're getting blood flow going from the friction that you're creating with the tool. And this happens to help because it's going to get blood flow to areas that your body pretty much forgot about. Because unfortunately our bodies are busy and they've got other things to do all day long. If you're eating Cheetos and Ding Dongs and Ho-Hos, I mean, now they've really got a lot of other things to do. So you want to keep in mind that this is a technique to basically get your body to pay attention to your muscles again, and these spots that maybe you have a tear or like a little micro tears that occurred years and years ago, and your body just never fully healed them. So you're getting that blood flow moving, you're breaking up adhesions, because remember, sticky muscles, if your muscles are sticking to the tissue overlying them, if your muscles are sticking to each other, you're going to have knots, you're going to have little lumpies in the muscles, and they're not going to allow the joints to move because your muscles move your joints. So something to keep in mind there. Now, we talked about the foot, we talked about the ankle. Now, moving up towards your knee, one of the big issues that we have with knee pain, I have so many people that go to their doctors and they're almost ready for surgery and things of that nature. And really, the problem is not that there's anything functionally wrong with that knee. It is that there is a tendon or ligament that's pulling, and most of the time it's a tendon. The iliotibial band, this is a tendinous band that starts from your hip bone and it goes all the way down to the side of your knee. This guy can cause all kinds of issues when it's pulling from your hip. So if your hip's tight and it's pulling, it's going to pull on your knee, and you're going to have pain right on the outside of your knee, pretty much in line with the under. So like if you look at your kneecap and the bottom draw a line from the bottom of your kneecap over to the side, you're going to feel like a knob, like a head of a bone. That's the head of your fibula. That's where your iliotibial band attaches. And that little sucker can cause all kinds of trouble from just pulling on your knee right there. It can also pull on your knee right there and cause like medial inside of your knee pain as well. Now, another big thing I see with folks is pain behind the knee. And this oftentimes is due to your hamstrings being really tight. And so now these suckers come down. Your hamstrings are going from your butt bone. So you can feel that like bone in your butt in the middle of your glute. If you slide your hand down and you go all the way down to below your knee, you're going to trace the pattern in which your hamstring muscles go. Now, you also have a hamstring muscle that kind of sits out to the side a little bit. It's lateral, so meaning closer to this IT band that goes from your hip to the outside of your knee. The biceps femoris, hamstring muscle, actually comes down and attaches at that head of the fibula as well too. So that can cause lateral knee pain. So you get what I'm saying here. Now, one of the ways to help to release pain in the knee is to work behind the knee at your calf muscle, because that's the attachment spots for your semimembranosus and semitendinosus part of your hamstrings. And so not at your knee crease, but just below it. Honestly, if you poke around just below your knee crease, so behind your knee crease, you'll find some tender spots. Those are the ones you want to work on, especially if you have knee pain. Now, if you're noticing that you have pain on the side of your knee, those guys, I'd be going up to the hip. And so moving right along up to that hip of yours, one of the ways to help to release hip pain, but also to release knee pain, is to work on the front and the side and the back of your hip. And you can easily do this with the gua sha tool. So that jade tool I was talking about, same kind of stroking as if you're painting motions, applying pressure. Find a knot, hold that jade tool in there and just kind of rock back and forth. Now, you might even see a muscle spasm. Let that sucker spasm. That is a good thing. You let it wear out. So if that happens to you, keep rocking it. You're going to feel so much better later. Now, the other biggie here is cupping. That's my other favorite mobility enhancement technique. Now, home cupping versus cupping with your acupuncturist is a little bit different, or cupping with your massage therapist. Now, at home, you'll often use either a silicone type of cup where you apply it manually, or you'll use a type of cup where you've got a pump and you can attach that to the cup and you pump the suction so you can create the amount of suction that you apply to that particular muscle. And so let's imagine you have a cup and you have the type where you're creating some suction. You put it onto your tissue and you go pump, pump, pump. And now you can look into that cup and you can see that your skin is looking dark purple or dark red. And you might go, oh my gosh, I'm doing the wrong thing. No. You're doing great. You're moving blood flow. You're getting blood flow into that cup. It should feel tight. It should feel a little bit tender. It should pull a little bit. But know that it's doing a good thing because it's working to get blood flow to somewhere that you might not have had blood flow to in the past. Now, how do you choose where to put the cups? I poke around on my hip. I'll poke around below my knee. I'll poke around on the side of my glute, down what I call the IT band, so this big tendon sheath that comes all the way down the side of the leg. Find tender spots. right in the center of that tender spot, that's where you want to center your cup. Stick that sucker right on there, leave it there 10-15 minutes, and then pull it off. And then work that area where the cup was with your gua sha tool. And so go back and forth, because that cup's going to help to enhance your overall reaction you get in terms of blood flow coming to the area and your ability to work on adhesions. Same thing goes for if you have a pain in the front of your hip, you can put that sucker right in front of your hip. Just don't put it on your abdomen. You've got some organs there, and you don't want to suck up any of your intestines into a cup. So safety is always first here. But you can easily, if you feel your hip bone in the front of your hip, you can easily go right below it there. That is a great spot, and you can find a lot of trigger points there. You can go out to the side from there. So if you find your front of your hip bone, so by that I mean put your hands on your hips. You'll feel your big wing bone there, and then slide your fingers down. You'll feel another little nodule, kind of a bone protruding forward. This is the stuff that if you lay down, these guys stick out. Those are your anterior superior iliac spines. I'm going to be a dork for a minute. But anyway, take your fingers over from there and start pressing and see if you get any pain in that area. You might find some trigger points there. That's where you want to put the cup, and let that cup sit 10-15 minutes, and then go and work on the gua sha. Start, painting that leg a little bit and get in there. This is going to help incredibly even with low back pain, because a lot of us have tight hips from sitting all day at our desk jockey jobs, and that is going to further pull our bodies forwards, and that's going to put some strain on our backs and our glutes. So big thing to keep in mind there. You can work on cupping your hips. You can work on gua sha in that area. Now, the part that comes tricky is the back side of you in terms of your glutes. And those glutes of yours could just as easily use some gua sha to help with your mobility of your back, because most of us are tight butted. And by that, I mean our butts literally light up, get really tight, and then it transfers to locking up our back. And so it's a chain reaction. Same thing goes if our ankles aren't working, our knees lock up. You usually look to the joint that's above where you have pain. So for example, if your foot hurts, you better look up at the ankle. If your ankle hurts, you better look up at the knee. If your knee hurts, go to the hip, etc., etc. And sometimes you have to look two joints up to figure out what's going on. And then going back through, poking around on the muscles and seeing what hurts. So for example, like I said before, if your ankle hurts, you're looking at your calf muscles. If your knee hurts, you're looking at your hamstring muscles and poking around to see what's tight and where there are knots. Also, if your knee hurts, you could look at your quad muscles too, because sometimes those suckers will cause issues. If your hip hurts, you're wanting to look in your glutes. You're wanting to look at the muscles just slightly below your hip a little bit. So this is a little caveat to my rule, but follow around the whole hip and pelvis. Now, if you have neck pain, you can also work to release your neck using the gua sha tool. Cupping's a little bit more tricky, but you can also do it if you're pretty talented. I've never been able to do it quite myself. This is why I love the gua sha tool, to be able to run that back and forth on my traps, so on top of my shoulders when they get tight, and the sides of my neck. Now, caveat here for anybody that is going to jump into this. Do know that with cupping and with gua sha, you can get bruising. And the bruising will last for a little while, sometimes a week, sometimes, it could last a little longer depending on how long it takes for your body to clear a bruise. The more bruising you get, it's not bad. It's actually better where you're bringing stuff to the surface, because a lot of us have old injuries where there's trapped blood in the muscles, and that trapped blood creates a knot, and it just sticks there and causes inflammation of the muscle and the nerve, and it locks up your mobility. So if you ever see little black spots or it gets really dark purple, it's not a bad thing. Just keep in mind that with cupping, and when you're doing it yourself, you don't want to leave it on the body more than 10-15 minutes, because yes, you could potentially have it there a little too long and break some blood vessels, but more often than not, it's not going to harm you. The big issue here is making sure that you acknowledge it, that you know that you might be bruised up, and you might get questions. When I work on my neck, a lot of people will be like, "Are you okay? Do we need to talk about things?" So just warn people, yep, I do gua sha, yep, I do cupping. Cupping's a little more distinct because those are just those round, look like an octopus or vacuum cleaner attacked you kind of marks, but gua sha is a little different. It looks like scraping techniques and looks like things got a little rough somewhere along the way. So something to keep in mind when you do that. So I started talking about the shoulder, and I want to go into how to work on the shoulder. Most of us have knots at the top of the shoulder. That is a critical point that you could get in with the gua sha tool and just dig and hold. You might get some spasms in there. Just hold those suckers and go to town. The other biggie is your biceps and triceps. Oftentimes, most people have really tight biceps and kind of weak triceps. So running the gua sha tool up and down your biceps can feel amazing, especially if you have some chronic elbow pain or anterior shoulder pain. Check out your biceps tendon and your biceps and kind of find some just real tender spots in your biceps and kind of rock back and forth with that gua sha tool. You'll see some release in your anterior chest, so anterior shoulder area. Also your pecs, so your chest muscles too. Take a look at those, see what you got going on there. Now the other biggie for everybody out there in the universe is the elbow muscles. So the ones that are actually attached to your arm, but they kind of cross your elbow, these suckers lock up, and they are our typing, our texting, our gaming muscles. These guys, I pretty much have everybody working on these no matter what. And the reason being is because the number one joint that will have arthritis in humans is our thumb. Because we have an opposable thumb and it does a lot for us, we tend to get more arthritis there than anywhere else. And the reason being is we use it so much, but we also don't take care of our forearm muscles. And our forearm has the muscles to help to move our thumb. And there's also some muscles that help to move your thumb kind of, I'd say about 3 inches or so, 2-3 inches, a little bit proximal, meaning if you look at your wrist and your thumb and you look 3 inches or so on your thumb side of that bone, being your radius there's some muscles in there. Poke around in there and see if anything's tender. Plus, just right on your hand. Releasing your hand can be amazing for helping to reduce pain in your fingers and your wrist. So something to keep in mind there. And typically same kind of thing, just like I've discussed the whole podcast, is just getting that gua sha tool out, put a little oil on, and just really apply pressure and kind of go scraping up and down with it. And apply pressure to wherever there are knots or wherever it's tender, because those are your trigger points, is what they're known as. So if you go through your whole body like this, and you do this maybe even 3 times a week, you're going to move a heck of a lot better than you used to. If you can, bribe a kiddo or bribe your partner into helping you out, that's huge, because now you can trade and you can get to your back and to your glutes in areas that sometimes are a little bit more tricky. Now, I think you technically can get to your glutes. You just have to lie on your side and dig in there and just really get to all those spots that hurt. Just find the spots that are sore and really press in there. Don't be shy, because if you are sissying out and not pressing hard, you might miss some spots. But the back's probably the hardest part, and that's where I tend to have folks, have someone help them out. Another big area is in the armpit area. Sounds kind of weird, but there are areas in our armpit where there are muscles that are really locked down that can cause us some shoulder pain, so anterior shoulder pain. They can also cause us some issues on top of the shoulder. And so you can do this yourself. Once again, highly recommended that you shave so that you don't have issues with hair getting pulled. But oil that area up and find the tender spots in your armpit and use the gua sha tool to help guide you and just kind of crank on those a little bit. Now, one little caveat there, our nerves do run through our shoulder, but for the most part, as long as you're staying low and not digging too far up into the cavernous area of your armpit, you should be good. If anything feels burny, that's when you're like, okay, I'm done. Or you might be using not enough oil. But if it's really starting to burn and the pain the burning sensation kind of goes down your arm, you've gotten to the nerves. Take it easy. Don't go too hard on those guys. But if you stay more in towards your lats, so this is your muscle that's going to come across from your back and kind of go up to your arm. If you stay more that way and closer to your rib cage, you're going to be just fine. You're not going to be getting towards any of those big nerves. So those are some of the areas that I highly recommend to work for helping with your mobility. And like I said, consistency is key. And you could pick different areas each night. You could be like, okay, my legs tonight, or maybe you can do knees below tonight, and then tomorrow you do up into the glutes, and then the next day you work on your elbows and so on. It's just one of those things that it's almost like, I tell people it's like greasing the joints. You just get stuff moving and you'll feel a heck of a lot better, and you'll notice yourself really moving a heck of a lot better. Now, the other big caveat to all of this is that a lot of us can do all of this mobility work, but if we walk stupid, and when I say walk stupid, that's not a nice word. If we don't walk properly, we're going to keep throwing ourselves off and keep re-injuring ourselves, or keep those patterns kind of going back to having knots. And so one of the big things that I want everyone to consider is to assess how you walk. And even stand in a mirror and look at yourself sideways. Are you leaning forward? Are you leaning back? What's happening? What are your shoulders doing? A lot of us have our shoulders hunched forward. Roll those suckers back. So I want everyone to stand up. I'm even going to stand up. Here's me standing up. Okay. Stand up straight. Roll your shoulders back. Now look straight ahead and imagine that there is a string pulling your head upwards. And at the same time, imagine that there's a string pulling your rib cage backwards. Now feel how that feels just standing there. Feels kind of weird, right? Now I want you to walk. Now walk around the room. I'm walking around my office here. And just walk like that. Feels kind of strange, but this is a normal posture. If you got a mirror, look at yourself sideways in this normal walking posture. By doing this every single day and focusing on walking in this manner, you will also help to prevent yourself from causing more issues with your mobility. You'll be shocked. It's quite awesome. Now, for those of you who are struggling to try to visualize the stuff I'm talking about here, you're in luck. Don't worry. I have videos for you. I have videos of me performing cupping and gua sha. In addition to that, I also have a resource for you for relearning how to walk. Now, this might sound really stupid, but honestly, so many of us have long forgotten how to walk and our posture. And honestly, most of us have too tight of a butt. And I know that might sound good to have a tight butt, but in this case, the muscles of the butt are too tight and they reverberate up. So those tight muscles in the butt reduce mobility of our pelvis and cause us to have back pain. And one of my most favorite people out there, his name's Jonathan Fitzgordon. He has something called corewalking.com. This is his website. And he teaches you how to walk again. Sounds kind of crazy, but honestly, it'll change your life. It can really help to reduce pain and really help with your glutes to relax, but also relaxing your hamstrings if your hamstrings are too tight, and also helping with the iliopsoas. He has this psoas release party course that's really awesome. So if you suffer from having tight hip flexors, so being the anterior part of your hip is tight, you feel pain radiating out to the side of your hip and maybe to your back, your psoas might be involved. If you sit more than 8, and I would say even more than 4 hours a day, you might be looking at having some psoas issues. So something to keep in mind. Big issue here. So I went through cupping and gua sha and learning how to walk. One of the last things that I typically have people think about is foam rolling. Now, I like foam rolling if you want to just easily kind of get blood flow generally to areas, but it doesn't help with mobility as much as digging in there. I really think that folks need to take a second look at getting into their muscles with the gua sha in addition to the cupping. Using a ball like the lacrosse balls and all those are great. They're going to get blood flow moving. They're going to help us to release areas. But in a lot of cases, I feel like the gua sha, the tool just gets in there so much better and we can pinpoint our trigger points. So I did include in my resources a video that's an intro video for foam rolling for anyone who's interested in it. This guy, Alex Poole, put out a great video some years ago just to give the basics, because I do think in general, little foam rolling is great. I actually use that instead of stretching for the most part. And then I supplement with my cupping, gua sha, and definitely always trying to walk properly. So those are my biggies here in terms of working on your mobility to help to enhance it, because of course we do have mobility techniques to move your joints. And in one of my podcasts, I think pretty much when I first started, I forget which number podcast it is, but there is one there where I'm talking all about the actual mobility techniques to help to grease your joints and get them moving. And then this is the way to get in there and release those muscles just a little bit further. And of course, if you're struggling with this and you're really needing some help, I am all ears. Put me into your group for a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. Ask me some questions. I absolutely love to talk about this stuff. It's my favorite thing in the whole universe in terms of helping to keep the body nice and spry. So shoot me a message. Let me know if you're struggling with this. The other big thing is finding an acupuncturist near you. Most acupuncturists are practicing gua sha and cupping, especially if they're sports medicine based acupuncturists. I highly, highly recommend searching folks out and basically call them and ask, do you do cupping and gua sha? If they say no, move on. You want somebody who can help you with these techniques and help you to practice these at home, because as much as I would love to be able to solve people's problems with pain and mobility, 1 week at a time when I see them, it just doesn't work that way. So got to have a little bit of the homework on board. All right. So this has been another episode of The Health Fix. We're talking all about moving like a teenager and mobility enhancement techniques. And in my next podcast that follows after this one, I also talk about ways to enhance mobility by channeling your inner kid and some of the fun just things that we forgot about for years, like jump rope and swinging on swings and hula hoop and things of that nature, and throwing a ball, and how all of these things that we consider child's play actually can work to help us with our mobility and to reduce stress at the same time. So check out my next podcast, episode 24, and stay tuned for more stuff that I'm going to put out here about helping to keep you young and mobile and spry until you're, 105 or so. Alrighty, I'm your host, Dr. Janine Krause. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to The Health Fix, the podcast all about taking control of your health, rebelling against aging, and having fun every day. A lot of patients ask me, do you think I'm aging too fast? So, I created an evaluation checklist for you to see for yourself. Plus, I created a resource guide to help you slow down the aging process right now. You can find it for free on my website, drjkrausend.com. If you like this podcast, help get the word out to others by liking it and rating it. If you'd like more natural health tips and want to join our Facebook community where I interact daily, click on the Join Group button on our website at drjkrausend.com.